It's okay to be messy. It's okay to be messy. And it's okay to be unclear. Clarity that you are feeling messy is clarity because you're aware of it.
This episode is brought to you by So to Speak, Rehumanizing the Workforce Once and for All, and the book Conversations, How to Manage Your Business Relationships One Conversation at a Time, by yours truly, Ivan Farber. Available on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversations About Conversations. On this show, we talk with movers, shakers, difference makers about the conversations that they lead in the world. Our guests are business leaders, authors, speakers, podcasters, and more. Today's guest is Kristy Mandour, and she's coming to us from upstate New York in the Utica, Rome area. Kristy is an intelligence coach and writer. She's a podcaster. Her podcast is called The Closet Series with Kristy Mandour. She's the founder of So to Speak, a company that does emotional coaching within organizations and also does group presentations. You can find her at sotospeak.com, and it's SOWTOSPEAK.com. And Kristy has a wide and varied educational background. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Communications and Media Studies from Ithaca College, a certification in organizational leadership from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching, and a master's in theater education from Emerson College. Please help me welcome to Conversations About Conversations, Kristy Mandour. Kristy, welcome.
Hi, Ivan. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you mention on your LinkedIn profile that you are rehumanizing the workforce once and for all. And I have to start there because that is such a big conversation. So I'd like to find out from you, how did you come to take that stand?
Well, I think it's because there was a sense of going through the motions in the workplace, and people were, as technology was becoming more front and center, people were going on the back burner in a way, and our human, genuine way of being human was almost shelved. And it was a little bit risky to bring any sort of humanity into the workplace. And we've all learned that that's a necessity, because yes, AI is going to be here and it's going to be doing what it needs to do that humans can't do, but it can never replace a human being.
So can you give me an example on both sides, both of something that's unhumanized or dehumanized, and as well as something that would then be humanized?
Sure. So conversations, I'm going to start with the latter, but conversations, human, it's just human to be able to have hard conversations, to be able to have exciting and curious and brainstorming conversations. That's human. Like nothing can, there's no, algorithm or data that can replace that, or robot that can replace that. And even if we fly forward in 30 years and there's robots who can, like Siri, Alexa expands that a bit more, it's not the same thing. It's just not. The unhuman stuff is all the data. It's everything that can be automated. It's everything that can be computerized. And I feel like we're still in a place where we're getting really clear and discerning between the two.
So it's the conversations is the human part of it. And I think that's why Susan Murphy, a recent guest on my show, connected us, because she knows how important I believe conversations are and how I'm building a community of people who are leading important conversations and who stand for extraordinary conversations.
Susan's great. She was on the Closet Series too. And I love that she connected us because she understands it just so from her background within broadcast journalism. And you can tell that she really thrives in that space of being curious and understanding and learning about people. And, in regards to what you do, like I would love to know too, like, what's your excitement about conversations?
Well, they're everything. Conversations are the building blocks of relationships. And although when I was a younger professional, it was all about achievement, success, and growing and more money, more this, more that. As I've aged, I realized that relationships are everything. And we don't really teach the skill of conversations in schools. Indirectly, trial and error. And so, Kristy, my long-term vision is from the podcast of having conversations about conversations with people, that I build a community of like-minded people, that then I build an academy for learning conversations that make a difference and all the different skills that are not taught in school, like negotiation skills or interviewing skills, things that might be taught by like the alumni office or the job office, but are not like your core curriculum. And then ultimately build up to Conversations University.
It's amazing. And it's so needed. And I feel like it's something that, like, what you're saying is so proactive. Whereas, yes, you can go to career services and you can go to, there's so many different resources out there, but a lot of them are reactive. So you're running into roadblocks that you probably, maybe not everything. Well, once you start your academy, it would be everything, but you maybe not everything, but you can at least feel a little bit more confident and grounded in being able to handle it, which is so empowering to know that you have the skills. And I just want to say, I feel like a part of the reason, like, we don't learn conversations, we don't learn how to do that. Rare few do. And there's almost, I don't want to say a shame because that's very extreme, but there's like, I want to say there's almost an embarrassment, like we should know how to do this. So if you actually ask and do something about it, you're feeling less than. Nobody knows what the heck they're doing when it comes to conversations. Nobody. So the more that you can have these tools and be honest and humble to say, I need a little help with this, or I need a little help with that, we're all just in a better place.
Yeah, I reached a stage of conscious incompetence pretty far into my career when I had a mentor. I was working at a company where until they felt like you were able to be independent on the phone with clients, they assigned you a mentor. And I write about this in my book. I had a really hands-on mentor who was retired military. And I even called him my tour mentor because he was so hands-on. But what he gave me was a science. And so half of my book is all about the science of conversations. And it's not the only way to do it, right? It's my way of how I came to it after having tens of thousands of conversations, very specific conversations in one industry. So it works for me. I share it with others. I think the key is to have a process or a method that which you approach a conversation, that you're always doing it. So like, for instance, I want to help you and others self-actualize. That's kind of where I come from. And so I'm thinking, okay, what does Kristy want to accomplish? And I didn't ask this yet, although obviously I've been studying you, your video podcast, your audio podcast, your website. So I'm thinking, what does Kristy want to accomplish? And then what's actually important is I ask you. So I'm going to ask you in this conversation or more globally, what is it that you'd like to accomplish?
So in this conversation and globally, it's to let people off the hook of getting it perfect. One of the biggest challenges that I notice myself and I notice with clients is being messy in conversations. Like, how can you have a conversation without knowing the outcome of it and show up genuine and show up as prepared as you can, depending on the situation, depending on the relationship, and to know that it's just a natural part of being human of not getting it right and it being a little sloppy. And that sometimes is what creates a bit more trust with the other person, because you're showing that genuine vulnerability. I know that's a very hot word right now, but it's that vulnerability isn't always about crying. Like, that's not, we all often go there like, oh, she was so vulnerable or he was so vulnerable. It's more about showing up when it's risky and feel like you're talking in tongues. And of course you're going to be prepared, but realizing that it's okay if you don't do it perfectly, because there's no such thing.
I had my tour mentor in my 30s, and in my 20s, I had my, what I call my tender mentor, which was really tender with me. And when I say my book is like half science, there's absolutely half art. I like what you're saying about authenticity and creativity, because people can tell when you're not being authentic, and when you're not vulnerable and you're closed, they are too.
100%. And it's also, there's something about in the professional, quote unquote, professional world, we feel like we have to be buttoned up and have it all together. And that if you're slippery at all in your communication, it's, you're unprofessional, or you're off, or you're not going to be considered credible. it's different. I'm not saying go in unprepared and just wing it. You can be prepared and still be human. And I feel like that comes from practice. I wish there was like an easy way to say this is the secret golden ticket for that, but it comes from practice, and a huge part of it across the board. And this, I guess, would be a can I stem my accomplish what I want to accomplish, would be also for people to listen in and get really, really clear on their intuition and raise their self-awareness so they know when they're clicked in to that perfect, for them, perfect balance of being prepared and being genuine, because it's different per person.
I love it's so yin and yang. When I asked you what you want to accomplish, it's both be messy, but also be clear.
Yeah.
Like just together.
Yeah. And the clarity is internal first. So you might be clear and your external might come out a little messy, but as long as you can practice anchoring yourself down, and it's a practice, and I don't even do it all the time the best, but it's also that. So then there's also that piece of self-compassion that comes in. Like, what do you do when you don't do it, quote unquote, the way you thought you should, or the way you, if you're presenting to the board, or you're pitching to a client, or you're having a family dinner and you're talking about a hot button issue, repair is like the number one thing. You can always show up, give yourself self-compassion afterwards. How can you be that mix of what you were saying, maybe not tormentor, but that fierce and tender? So there's two, self-compassion isn't giving you a pass, like super tender, you did a great job, when really you might not have. It might be saying something like, you know what, how can you make it better next time? Like, you did the best you could, and how can you make it better, without just this kind of gut punch. I just feel like one of the top things is internally getting clear, so that even if it's messy outside, you showed up genuine and clear internally.
Your company name, so to speak. Tell me about that.
So to speak came to be from a workshop I ran. I was doing a workshop locally at our local Thinkubator, which is an incubator for small companies and, startups. And I was doing a workshop to help new business owners and startups market themselves better. So how can they get clear on what they believe in? This was like big with when Simon Sinek's whole, the big why, the golden circle and all of that was really hot. And so I said, okay, so they want to speak, but what are they saying to themselves? They need to plant in themselves and in their business what they want to speak out. Again, gain clarity internally so that they could speak out. And so we ended up having a workshop called So to Speak, and it was all about marketing. And then from there, I just noticed that I'd always wanted to take the creative arts and merge it with communications, because there's just an inherent playfulness to that. Communications is a broad term, but when we're talking about communicating interpersonally or interpersonally, it can get really intricate, and it can get, like, we said, sloppy and messy, and people can get unsure of how they're coming through. And I said, what if we made it so that there was more of a playful piece to it?
So the so to speak, it's almost like, and I'm just trying it on from different angles.
Sure.
Like there might be like punctuation in different ways of saying, like, it's so, comma, to speak, or so what you reap, or so what you reap from speaking. Like, the reason why I asked you is I didn't get it completely. It was more like it's an expression, so to speak, but there really is. And so like I'm saying, it could be a comma, it could be an end dash, could be a semicolon, it could be so to speak.
Ivan, that is the most I've ever analyzed it. And I love that. And it's whatever you want it to be, Ivan. It's the pun. I love play on words. So it's totally the pun. It really is. What are you planting? So there's a huge focus on mindset and self-awareness. What are you planting? What are you planting internally? And how can that again click in so that that's also what you are speaking non-verbally and verbally externally?
Yes, I can incorporate planning as a huge part of a conversation for me.
Yes.
And I definitely have a plan and a structure that is completely malleable, but I still know where I am in a conversation. So like in my book, I talk about create. We're creating something. Like I think also why Susan Murphy wanted to connect us is because I asked Susan if she'd be like one of the deans in my
Oh, I
Conversations
love that.
University. And what I thought, Kristy, when I started with the idea was I would be the teacher and I would be me, the expert. And the more I learn and grow and develop, the more I realize, A, it takes a village, to quote both Hillary Clinton and you on your website, but also that I really don't have a monopoly, certainly, on good information about it. I have just one perspective. So I changed my vantage point to gathering up a whole faculty. So that's another reason why I think that she's connecting us is
Well,
because
I love that. And I
be on the
think it's so
faculty.
humbling for you to be able to admit, like, I looked at it this way. It's humbling to say, you know what, it does take a village and there are a lot of other people. And there's something to be said about creating a community, which in essence is what the academy would be, of people who are always learning, people who have just this growth, like insatiable mindset to learn. And it's almost like we are coming together, and I'm going to share, like, I get excited. Like when people come to workshops, that this is similar to what I gather from you. It's like, I'm going to share this stuff with you. Like, this is too good not to share. So it's not about not being called an expert. I think there is some credibility and benefit to that. But at the same time, looking at it from the perspective of, I'm so excited. I have this influence to be able to connect these people together and then share all of this information that actually is knowledge that they can then apply. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's my bucket list goal.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And it's such a great intention. I can see that happening.
And I thank you. And because I have a lot of depth in one type of conversations. I have a 30-year career in financial services. So when it comes to talking with people about money, like it's so deep, but I don't have the breadth. Before I ask you about some of the other terminology that you do, emotional coaching, energy leadership coaching, intelligence coaching, I need to understand what the closet is all about. Like you have the closet series, and I want to know, I'm going to analyze that too. Okay, it's where you're recording, but does it have other meanings besides the fact that you're recording in the closet?
Ivan, I want to know your interpretation before I tell you. What do you think it means?
Well, on a deep level, right? You've got so to speak, right? You could be helping people come out of the closet. And I don't mean in the way that it is in our society. Like,
it's not just sexually. Everybody's
right.
in the closet for some reason.
Yes, it ties back to authenticity.
Yes.
And actually there's only like layers of closet. Like as we pull one, like not really onion, like an onion, but also
Sure.
like a pomegranate is my more favorite metaphor. Like you're peeling the pomegranate, but then you come up with these new containers inside the pomegranate. And then you got sweetness, but you also got pithiness and like messy, authentic, real pulling it back. So, okay. So
Fun.
that's my interpretation of
Yes.
the closet series as well as.
So yes. So I will start backwards and say peeling a pomegranate is one of my favorite things in the entire world. By the way, anybody who hasn't, I highly recommend it. I when they're in season, my kids and I get excited to do it. The closet series started, this is my linen closet. I'm in it right now. It started during 2020. Like most people, they created a cloffice. Their office and closet became this one thing that nobody else could go to. One of my friends sent me a Wall Street Journal article months after I started the show and was like, it's a thing. The cloffice is a thing. So it really started just out of being efficient with my use of space to have private conversations with clients during 2020 and to have a door away from my kids. So that whole thing. And I really wanted to shine a light on local businesses who were, whether they were online and brick and mortar, everybody was online at that point. So I wanted to make sure they survived and thrived, and they were being so resourceful and so creative in ways that they could do that. And I had a ton of friends who were business owners. So I was like, let's have conversations like someone's a fly on the wall and just they can get to know the person behind the business. And it started that way, very simply. And then the more people I had on, I realized very so in line with you. It was that self-actualization piece. People have said to me like, who's your audience? And I said, it started first as business people. And then it turned to anybody who wants to self-actualize will tune in, because the guests who come on are cross industry. There's so many vast professionals that come on and non-professionals, a ton of creatives and artists that show up too. And the core theme is self-actualizing and coming out of the closet about something. So with you, how many people are in the closet about finances? Like they're so ashamed of how they look at finances, or how their finances are so messy, or that they should know by this age how to handle, and they're in the closet. And then you allow them, the relief to just go, no, let's get out of there. And so you can feel better. And then it lifts the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment and all that stuff. So it first was more functional, and then it shifted to be functional, but then also to be metaphorical of, it's not just sexuality. It's not just, what we think of stereotypically. Everybody is in the closet about something if they have any shame or guilt. And if you have a pulse, you have shame or guilt. So it's just to expose it a little bit more.
You've made me laugh in a couple ways, mostly inside, because I didn't want to interrupt you, but the clofus, I have not heard the term clofus.
Oh, look it up after this, Ivan.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a thing. And then the thinkubator makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And then I also laughed inside about maybe changing the name of your podcast, throwing out there, Coming Out of the Closet with Kristy Mandour.
There you go.
Like, because the closet series, it's like a little bit like, what is that? Is that closeted? Why is it called the closet series? But it's like coming out of the closet with Kristy Mandour.
That's it. It's what it is. I'm keeping it short and sweet. I like to keep the mystery.
You've got door in your name. So you could open the closet door with Kristy Mandour.
There you go. It's endless, Ivan, the possibilities.
That's right. All right. So I want to get into these terms: intelligence coach, emotional coaching, energy leadership coaching. Tell us about that.
Okay. So it's emotional intelligence coaching. So I do emotional intelligence coaching, which is how to, in most layman's terms, it's how to get along with yourself and other people better by understanding how you're showing up. So understanding your emotions, being able to manage your emotions, and then being able to make better decisions. There were 5 competencies, and I recently heard that I think they merged into 4. Daniel Goleman is like the father of emotional intelligence. So he would know this better than me. So if you have a chance to have him on, he can answer this. But I was first informed of and they scaffold, like they do, you get on one and then the other. So it's self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, intrinsic motivation, and social awareness, or relationship management. I think there should be a 6th of self-compassion. I feel like it is just, you need that in your pocket especially when you're starting with the self-awareness piece, because when you do start paying more attention of how you're showing up and how you're thinking, you can easily be a total, I don't know if you can swear on this, so I'll say jerk. You could be a total jerk to yourself. And I think it's normal, but then you also can have major insight. You can also go, oh, that's pretty cool. That's working really well. This isn't working really well. And you need that self-compassion so that you can move forward, because then the next is self-regulation. So self-regulation is, you notice how you're feeling. Now you have a choice of what you want to do about that. And regulation isn't always getting yourself down from being really angry or being very sad, it's also, if you're really jazzed up, you just came off a vacation, or you just got a really great phone call with great news, and you're about to go into a board meeting where you have to focus, you need to regulate. Or if you got really great news and you walk in the office and you found out that a coworker just got a horrible phone call, or they, just found something out about a family member, you need to be able to regulate. So it goes both ways. And the more you know yourself, the more, I always call it like the Matrix jelly moment, because it's like you turn into Neo, time stands still a little bit, and you can respond instead of react. So emotional intelligence gives you that opportunity to know yourself really well. And the more you know yourself and you take those pauses, it stretches time, even though it doesn't. It just gives you a little bit more space to choose how you want to respond. And the cool thing is that when you're raising your self-awareness and you're learning how to regulate yourself, which is a skill for a lot of people. You are simultaneously building your empathy. Because when you're humble enough and brave enough to be honest with how you're feeling, more so than not with a trusted confidant, whether it's a loved one or a coach or a therapist, you feel seen. So doing it with someone else just makes you feel better. You feel more supported. And then when you're on the receiving end of someone who's feeling something that is overwhelming or frustrated or really depressed or anxious, you know what it feels like to be in a similar position, so you can empathize with them better. It's really cool. It's all so that's that. Energy leadership is part of that, because energy leadership is pretty much, it's just to break it down. It's complex, but you can break it down to how are you showing up, knowing yourself, what boosts your energy, what depletes your energy across the board. That's it.
See, this is the kind of classes that should be taught at Conversations Academy. And imagine,
that will be, I'll say that will be taught. You'll have so many phenomenal classes offered. You will be offering something like that. I can tell when it happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could be on the faculty for sure. But imagine even in high school that you had like an empathy 101 class or a compassion class, or like these things that you're talking about. We leave it up to chance in our society. Maybe kids have good parents who teach them empathy, or maybe they're empathic parents, but the kids decide to rebel and they're like, I'm not going to be empathic. I'm going to be a thinker. What a world we could have, or let me retract, what a world we will have when we have an actual school that focuses on empathy and compassion and being civil. I had a guest last week where he said what humanity needs is a civil discourse. Like, all of our problems is because people haven't learned to have civil discourse. They don't teach that.
They don't. And they're doing it more for sure. But what we need more of, because there are a lot, it does have a way to go. We need more leaders who buy into it, who realize that within the workforce, it does matter. It doesn't make you soft. And it's ingrained in our society that if you are empathetic and you're caring, you're soft. So that needs to change totally. And the second is that if you are empathetic, you're going to be steamrolled in some way. You're not going to be able to move forward. You're not going to be taken seriously. And I feel like that starts with the top. It starts with the leaders who really buy into it and don't do it as a checklist. They don't look at it like, okay, I was empathetic, and they check it off as a have to do. Or the leaders that say, you know what, I want some emotional intelligence coaching for the staff or for the rest of the management team. I'm good because I'm so successful. And that's something that often happens too, is that the more success a leader achieves in his or her own vision of what that is, they're kind of like, well, why do I need to do this? I was successful on my own with other people, sure, but I didn't need this to get there. So I'm good. They need it. And I'm seeing more leaders who are humbly admitting, I am successful and I have a ways to go with being successful in relationships. So we need more leaders who are buying into it and believe and understand it.
All right. My closing statement, since it's my show, I get to make the closing statement second. Number one, I want to acknowledge you for jumping right in with me without a lot of knowledge about what we were going to talk about. But that's also why we're aligned, is because we both believe we enter a conversation, we're pretty clear, and we're clear about how we're not clear. And then we're willing to play in the conversation, which ultimately makes the conversation and our relationships richer. I mean, this is the first time we're talking. What I love is when I get a podcast guest who, after the conversation, is like, that was a really great conversation. I mean, what the juice of life is when you have a conversation, even if it's someone you've never talked to before, and it's juicy. So I acknowledge you for bringing it. Lots of fun stuff that amused me throughout. And so tickled my fancy. I want to speak directly to the people who are listening to this conversation right now. If you are a loyal listener of the show, I want to know who you are. I want to connect with you. So direct message me on social media, LinkedIn or Twitter, or email me, ivan@conversations.biz. I want to know who you are, because there's a big endeavor here. There's a community to build. there's an academy to build, and there's a university to build. And I am not going to do it alone, but I'm the one who is determined to start it. I mean, Walt Disney said it all started with a mouse. So started with a mouse. With that, Kristy Mandour and everybody out there, I want to thank you for being a part of this conversation about conversations.
Thank you so much, Ivan.